without further ado, here's the Foolish 50 for 2023. In his first season back from Tommy John surgery, Justin Verlander had a 1.75 ERA and won the American League Cy Young Award. As good as he looked, there's no indication he'll do it again. In terms of his ERA estimators like XFIP and Sierra, he was more like the 8th or 12th best qualified starting pitcher. Still, his velocity and stuff looked comparable to pre-injury JV, and he may be able to add more volume now that he's a year removed from full recovery. With a 131 OPS plus and 4.2 F4 in 133 games, George Springer had a solid season by his standards, but the thing that gets him on the list is that he did all that while hurt. He played through a pretty painful elbow injury for most of the summer. Even though he'll be 34 this year, there's serious upside for a potentially healthy Springer. I also think the impending move to right field might be a positive for his overall health and value. Speaking of injuries, Luis Robert stays on this list because he went through the ringer last year. Illness, blurred vision, and dizziness threw him off his rhythm early, only for lingering hand/wrist issues to plague him in the last couple months. On paper, his 2022 was a total regression from his superstar in a small sample 2021, but playing through injury will do that, and if Robert is really ready to go in 2023, he's getting a spot on this list. Big discrepancy here between my ranking and MLB Network's. Last year, Bo Bichette was controversially left off the Foolish 50, and pretty much all my doubts about him came true. His strikeout-to-walk ratio was bad, and his defense at shortstop graded out poorly. However, under the hood, he chased less outside the zone, which may pay dividends in the future. In fact, he recovered to put together a typical Bo Bichette slash line after a miserable April. Because of this, I'm anticipating improvement in 2023. Matt Olson was good, but not a top 50 player last year, and if MLB hadn't implemented changes to the shift, he might have found himself on the outside looking in on this list. But if any type of hitter will benefit, it'll be him. Olson pulled 12 line drive outs into the shift last year, tied for the 8th most in Major League Baseball. He also struck out a lot more and walked a lot less in 2022 with Atlanta than 2021 with Oakland, but still crushed the ball when he made contact, finishing top 10 in average exit velocity. After a poor 2021, Jeff McNeil had a huge bounce back last year, winning a batting title in the process. It made that 2021 look like a blip compared to every other year of his career. Because he doesn't hit the ball hard, the sustainability of McNeil's approach will always be scrutinized, but his bat control is freakish. His defense at second base has also graded out excellent lately. Like McNeil, Wander Franco is another hitter who has quantity of contact, but not necessarily quality of contact. We're all waiting for him to tap into his raw power, but his 20th percentile average exit velo and barrel rate from last year aren't quite cutting it. Still, the young Rays shortstop has accrued 4.7 F4 in 153 career games. That's why I'm giving him a top 50 floor for now, even if MLB Network hasn't. His ceiling, of course, is top 1. I was hoping 2022 would represent a step forward for Will Smith, but he simply replicated his past successes instead. Still, there were some interesting developments, including a reduction in strikeout rate while continuing to hit the ball hard. He's a catcher with a career OPS plus of 129, including 120 last season, which is incredible and shouldn't be taken for granted, yet he may be capable of more. I'd rather have 150 innings of Spencer Strider than 200 innings of almost every other pitcher. In his rookie season, he led all starters with a 38% strikeout rate, and nobody else with 100 innings came close. He also had the best XFIP and Sierra of that group. Basically, on a rate basis, he was the best starter not named DeGrom, and he has the 100-mile-per-hour fastball and devastating slider to match. He missed out on MLB Network's 50, but lands a spot on mine. Let's see how much volume Strider can provide the Braves in 2023. Here's where I've landed on Byron Buxton. I think the term injury-prone is overrated. In many cases, past injuries don't increase the likelihood of future injuries. People thought Aaron Judge was injury-prone until he magically wasn't. Buxton may be the exception, though, as he's played 100 games in a season only once. Still, he's been worth 8 F4 in 153 games dating back to 2021, so if that were a full season, he'd be an MVP frontrunner most years. I was higher on Pete Alonso than almost everyone at this time last year, which means I get to keep him in roughly the same spot while the other rankers hastily bump him up their lists. What I saw in Alonso was a significant reduction in strikeout rate, a trend which held true for him in 2022 as he put up a season comparable to his 2019 rookie breakout. His poor first base defense limits his upside in terms of stats like WAR, but he's a top 50 player because the polar bear rakes. I hesitated when I wrote SDP instead of BOS next to Xander Bogaerts' name. Although he's consistently been a top 25 or so player with the Red Sox, I'm anticipating an adjustment period for him in San Diego, not just because he'd only been with one organization for his entire adult life, but because his home run swing is perfectly calibrated to Fenway, not so much Petco. On the flip side, I'm encouraged by how his defense at shortstop graded out, as well as the confidence the Padres have in his glove. I think he'll have a better 2024 than 2023. Despite the arrival of Verlander, Max Scherzer is my Mets ace in these rankings. In 2022, Max Scherzer basically had another elite Max Scherzer year that sadly had a 6-week injury right in the middle of it. With a 2.29 ERA and 2.64 FIP, you might be asking yourself, why is he moving down the foolish 50 from last year? The simple answer is that projecting the future requires you to be ageist, and Scherzer will be 39 in July. Despite past performance, there are younger pitchers that I prefer in 2023. Like Brandon Woodruff. Here's the story of Brandon Woodruff's 2022. He looked kinda bad to start the year, and then he said, "Hey guys, I have Raynaud's, which means I literally can't field the ball in my hands, which, believe it or not, is important for pitching." He missed a month, then proceeded to have a 2.38 ERA and 32% strikeout rate in his final 18 starts. MLB Network dropped him to 77 on their list. I have him 40 spots higher. Brandon Nimmo might be the player I'm most surprised to see not in MLB Network's top 50. In his early days, he was a high walk rate, high strikeout rate outfielder with questionable glove at times. Now, he's more eager to make contact, and his defense in center has been worth plus 10 StatCast outs above average over the last 2 seasons. So, while the woke propaganda arm of the league has a 130 OPS plus center fielder with plus defense at number 54, I have him at number 37, like a real American patriot. Shane McClanahan's success became ever more common in 2022. By embracing his changeup, he pitched to a 1.76 ERA and 35% strikeout rate in his first 19 starts. He appeared to be the AL Cy Young frontrunner by late July, but struggled the rest of the way. Those struggles even included a 2-week absence in September due to a shoulder impingement. Given his youth, the hope is that he'll grow into a workhorse capable of pitching deep into games and staying strong throughout the season. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has tumbled quite a bit since grabbing a top 10 spot a year ago. The narrative around his offensive game has been simple. He does everything right except elevate the baseball. In 2022, his average launch angle dropped from 9 degrees to 4. His walk rate also dropped, as his O-swing, aka chase rate, rose from 28% in 2021 to 34% in 2022. Vladdy Jr. has MVP upside, but a significant drop is warranted here, especially considering he doesn't have much to offer defensively. Adley Rutschman is the first Baltimore Oriole to ever make the Foolish 50. The former number 1 overall draft pick racked up over 5 F-WAR in his 113-game rookie season last year. Between his advanced swing decisions and contact skills, as well as elite catcher defense, he made the transition from the upper minors to the majors look trivial. If there's any next step to take, it would be hitting the ball harder with more consistency. But that's just nitpicking. Rutschman is already in the conversation for best backstop in baseball. Zach Wheeler's 2022 regular season wasn't quite what we expected. Coming off a season where I thought he should have won the Cy Young Award, he lost a tick on his fastball, missed a few starts, and didn't pitch as deep into games as consistently as he did in 2021. So what's to like here? Well, he made up for lost time in the playoffs, throwing 35 innings of 2.78 ERA ball against top competition. His ERA estimator metrics were also pretty darn close to his career bests. Wheeler will be a top pitcher again if he approaches 200 innings. Rafael Devers illustrates an important element of these rankings, which is that the league-wide run environment went down, so if a hitter held steady, they actually performed comparatively better. For example, his OPS was 11 points lower than his 2021 mark, but his OPS plus was 7 points higher. His hard hit rate dropped slightly from 52 to 51%, but his percentile ranking rose from 92nd to 96th. Basically, Devers didn't really notice that the ball was less juiced, and he moves up a few spots because of it. He could move up a fair bit more if he continues to make progress on defense. He just went from -13 to -2 outs above average. After grabbing a top 20 spot a year ago, Kyle Tucker slides a bit to number 30. For the first few weeks of the season, he was one of the unluckiest players in baseball, but recovered to post a 128 OPS plus, which was still a marked decline from 147 in 2021. Tucker is one of the most well-rounded players in the game. Not only did he club 30 homers and swipe 25 bags last season, he won his first career Gold Glove in right field. This is a ranking I may come to regret. Tucker is just 26 this year, and a little more progression could have him pushing for a spot back in the top 20, if not the top 10. After just failing to make the list last year, my mistake, Austin Riley demonstrated a more repeatable version of his 2021 breakout in 2022, increasing his average exit velocity, hard hit rate, and barrel rate to counteract the inevitable BABIP regression. Riley was slugging over 600 through July, but slumped the rest of the way to finish outside of MVP contention. If there's any knock on him, it's the defense at third base. I believe it's mediocre. StatCast thinks it's just plain bad, having been worth -12 outs above average over the last couple seasons. Still, Riley hits better than most first basemen while still occupying the more difficult position on the diamond. Another player who balled out in 2021 but didn't quite make the list last year is Carlos Rodon. Over the last couple seasons, only Corbin Burnes and Zach Wheeler have been worth more in terms of F4, and those two have tossed 60 more innings than Rodon across that time frame. Rodon boasts one of the most effective fastballs thrown by any starting pitcher in the league. Volume remains a question, as Rodon tossed a career-high 178 innings for the Giants last year before making his way to the Bronx via free agency. Others have questioned his culture fit in the Yankees organization, but in terms of the analytics, all signs point toward another successful season in 2023. Corey Seager lands at number 27 on this list because it was simply as high as I could put him. The highlight of his first season with the Rangers was health, as he played over 140 games for the first time since 2017. His .245, .317, .455 slash line was well below career marks, but the real highlight is the StatCast data. Seager led all MLB shortstops with a .372 StatCast xWOBA and posted a .242 BABIP that stood in stark contrast to his .317 career average. With the shift restrictions in place, he stands to be one of the biggest gainers, and the kick is that he posted a +4 StatCast outs above average despite a less than sparkling reputation defensively. Alex Bregman's 2022 was his best season in a few years. He won't ever hit 40 homers in a season again, but he's one of the rare hitters in MLB who you can reasonably expect to walk more than strike out. Only two qualified batsmen, Juan Soto and Max Muncy, chased outside the strike zone less often than Bregman, and Bregman was significantly more aggressive than those two in the zone. He also continues to grade out as one of the best defensive third basemen in the league, just shy of that Nolan Arenado, Matt Chapman, Ke'Bryan Hayes level. I doubted him a bit with last year's ranking, but JT Realmuto once again reasserted himself as the best catcher in Major League Baseball in 2022, although his grasp on the crown could be weakening in the wake of Adley Rutschman. Realmuto posted career bests in stats like OPS plus and WAR last season. Behind the plate, he combines solid framing with the league's best pop time, a tool that may come in handy given the larger bases in 2023. If I could sum up JT Realmuto's freakish athleticism, I'd point out that he was successful in over 95% of his stolen base attempts, while base stealers against him were only successful at a 56% rate. I was the high man on Francisco Lindor last year. Many rankers doubted him, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt, a move which ultimately worked as he finished 6th in hitter F4 in Major League Baseball. The good news and bad news about Lindor is I think he was a fundamentally similar player in 2022 to his less impressive showings in 2020 and 2021. I'm basing that off plate discipline metrics and batted ball data. The difference on offense was probably just dumb BABIP luck. And while he plays the best shortstop defense in the league, the shortstops ranked ahead of him counter with better hitting. You might be surprised to see Aaron Nola this high in the grand scheme of my starting pitcher rankings. Truth be told, I think anything in that top 5 to top 15 range is pretty fungible, but Nola lands a great spot because I don't think there's a pitcher in MLB who commands his arsenal better. There are plenty of pitchers with better stuff, but none of them hit the target quite as often as Nola. With free agency looming, he's one more big season away from a monster payday. I audibly gasped when I saw MLB Network had him ranked at 79. This might be our biggest disagreement. Whoops. After being left off the Foolish 50 last year, Jose Altuve lands at number 22 as the best full-time second baseman in Major League Baseball. In 2017, Jose Altuve won MVP with a 160 OPS plus. In 2022, he matched that total while only finishing 5th. Honestly, the only thing keeping Altuve away from a top 20 spot is his position on the aging curve. He'll be a 33-year-old middle infielder this season. Also, while I have you here, Jose Altuve didn't participate in the trash can banging scandal. The data collected by Tony Adams and reporting surrounding the scheme backs that up. With a 3.5 ERA in what was offensively a down year league-wide, Garrett Cole might have been the worst pitcher making an appearance on this list in 2022. Since donning pinstripes, he has done a lot of things well, but continues to get barreled up at a high rate, meaning he's simply allowed too many homers to reach his peak in Houston. Still, as a Sierra enjoyer, I would point out that his 2.73 Sierra last year was second best among qualified starters, trailing only Shohei Ohtani. Swinging the home run fly ball luck the other way could have him moving back up this list. Fernando Tatis Jr. is a year removed from a lost season entirely of his own creation. Between multiple motorcycle accidents and a PED suspension, he used up a lot of the goodwill he generated in San Diego during his first few big league seasons. It's worth remembering Tatis is an elite power speed threat with a career OPS plus of 160, 4th best among active hitters in MLB. But it's also been a long time since he played in MLB. He'll miss 20 more games before he gets the chance this year, and there are serious questions about his defense as he moves to right field. I'm exercising caution. The only player tougher to rank on this list than Tatis is Bryce Harper. Keep in mind, this is a list of my top 50 players for 2023 specifically, a season which Harper is set to miss at least half of after undergoing Tommy John surgery this past offseason. A healthy Harper is likely still a top 10 player, but I had to find a ranking that acknowledges both his overall skill and current unfortunate circumstances. When he played, Harper appeared on his way to another MVP award when a UCL injury derailed his second half, but he made up for lost time with a monster playoff performance. Hopefully he picks up from there once he's back this summer. On the surface, Ronald Acuna Jr. was far below his usual standards in 2022. His career OPS plus up until then was 138, last year it was 114, and he wasn't able to accrue as much WAR as usual because he graded out as negative in the outfield defensively rather than his usual plus. Still, there's plenty of hope that Acuna can vault himself back into the top 10. He's now a year removed from ACL tear recovery, meaning he should be stronger, and despite some base running scares, he still managed to swipe 29 bags in 119 games last year. The most encouraging signs are found in his StatCast expected stats. He was 95th percentile in xWOBA. After a cruddy April where he struggled with, among other things, bad luck on umpires' ball strike calls, Julio Rodriguez was one of MLB's finest players from May onwards. As he rose through the prospect ranks and grew into his body, many projected a slower, corner outfielder type with big power. Instead, he tacked on muscle while retaining his raw athleticism, boasting 98th percentile StatCast sprint speed and +9 StatCast outs above average in center. Between that and his elite exit velocities, he immediately debuted as one of, if not the toolsiest player in the big leagues. Some might find this ranking aggressive, but not MLB Network. They have him one spot ahead. I'm proud to say this isn't the first time Sandy Alcantara has been featured on the Foolish 50. He surprised some by grabbing the number 40 spot last year, an aggressive move that paid dividends as Alcantara proceeded to unanimously win the NL Cy Young Award by getting 71 more hitters out than any other pitcher in MLB. I don't know if he'll be able to repeat the volume again, but he's still a young arm who averages 98 on his sinker, 92 on his changeup, and 90 on his slider. If there's any nitpick, his ERA estimator stats like FIP and Sierra are really good, but not quite elite. You might be surprised to see Manny Machado at number 15 on my list, as most rankers are giving him a top 10, if not top 5 spot. Here's the way I see it. Comparing his 2022 hitting peripherals to his 2021, he chased more, made contact less, struck out more, and had a significantly lower barrel rate and average exit velocity. Basically, in 2021, he had elite peripherals and good outcomes. Last year, he had good peripherals and elite outcomes. I'd be surprised if he replicated his 2022 success in 2023. Still a heck of a player, but still not top 10 for me going forward. The joke's on me though, because Machado already got his big extension from the Padres, meaning he doesn't even have to opt out and test the market. Trey Turner lands at number 14, the exact same ranking I gave him last year. Turner remained excellent in 2022, although didn't quite reach the heights of his 2021 and 2020 campaigns. He now joins a Phillies team that he's the perfect antithesis of, adding speed and respectable shortstop defense to a ball club that needed it. It wouldn't be surprising if the back end of his contract turned into an albatross. Players who make speed such a big component of their game might not always age well, but if he leads the Phillies to a World Series in the next few years, it won't matter one bit. In 2022, Corbin Burns' game took a step back on a rate basis. For example, his FIP nearly doubled from an astonishing 1.63 to 3.14. He also had some rough starts in the second half, allowing 5 or more runs on 4 separate occasions. His stuff still looked great, but maybe not quite as sharp as in 2021. But the real key to this ranking is the volume he provided, tossing 202 innings compared to 167 in his Cy Young season. I think Burns provided a more sustainable version of his success last year. Hopefully he can touch 190 or 200 innings again without the second half struggles. After an unprecedented free agency in which he signed mega deals with 2 teams, the Giants and the Mets, only to have those deals nullified by his physical, Carlos Correa returned to the Twins and, perhaps controversially, returned to the Foolish 50 as the number 1 shortstop in Major League Baseball. Why? Why Carlos Correa after a doctor called his ankle the worst he's ever seen? Because I genuinely believe Correa is a better hitter than Lindor, better defender than Seager, and better hitter and defender than Trey Turner, albeit while lacking the speed element to his game. It might be the hottest take you find on this list. Paul Goldschmidt won the NL MVP award last year, all but solidifying his Hall of Fame credentials in the process. Why no top 10 spot? It's actually a similar situation to that of Manny Machado, in which the peripheral numbers, the stats I use to try to predict the future, were better in 2021 than 2022, despite opposite results. Based on the underlying data, Goldschmidt was right in line with his career averages. I don't think his true talent level changed enough to justify a top 10 spot. Plus, he's going into his age 35 season. Everyone ages differently. I understand Goldschmidt just had a career year at 34, but it's still worth factoring into the rankings. Again, somewhat controversially, my number 10 player in MLB and number 1 first baseman is Freddie Freeman. Although Goldschmidt outperformed Freeman offensively last season, the gap in their StatCast outs above average actually gave them the exact same FWAR total of 7.1. In fact, one could argue Freeman just had the best non-2020 season of his career. Compared to Goldie, Freeman is 2 years younger, strikes out less, and hits the ball just as well. His StatCast xWOBA was 36 points higher than Goldschmidt's. I'm not here to claim that Freddie Freeman was the best first baseman in 2022, but this list is looking forward. I think he'll be the best in 2023. In his 11 starts last season, Jacob deGrom did absolutely nothing to dissuade me that he's the best starting pitcher in Major League Baseball. Among all pitchers, not just starters, his 1.59 Sierra was the second best in the league, trailing only Edwin Diaz. I know. He can't stay healthy. He's already had scares in spring training with the Rangers. But I also believe that injuries aren't as predictable as we think they are. From 2017 to 2020, DeGrom didn't miss a start. It'd be one thing if there was a healthy pitcher out there who was 90% as dominant and routinely throwing 180 or 200 innings, but the way I see it, there just isn't. I'd rather draft Corbin Burnes in fantasy, but everyone knows DeGrom is the best. Right? Last year, Yordan Alvarez took the big step we'd all been hoping for, inserting himself squarely into the best hitter in MLB conversation. By most measures, including normalized stats like OPS+, and batted ball data like exit velo and barrel rate, he trailed only Aaron Judge. Alvarez has always crushed the ball, but in 2022, he crushed it even more than usual, all while dramatically cutting down his strikeouts and upping his walks, and he did this at the young age of 25. Going forward, having now established himself as a god-tier hitter, the real questions are on defense. He's been playing the field more, and his lack of mobility hurts, but his cannon arm and left might help offset that. Jose Ramirez was hard for me to rank. After MLB Network ranked him at 15th a year ago, while I ranked him at 5th, we've met in the middle at number 8 and number 7. J-Ram, who is probably my personal favorite player in the league, looked like an MVP candidate early on. In his first 54 games, he had 16 homers and 16 strikeouts. But he played through a thumb injury that he suffered in June, hurting his season pace, but helping his Guardians secure a surprise AL Central victory. Ramirez underwent surgery on the thumb at the season's conclusion. If he's truly feeling right, he'll be in a position to reclaim the title of best third baseman in baseball. After just missing out on a top 10 spot last year, Mookie Betts lands at number 6 after what was probably his best season since his 2018 MVP campaign, but honestly, it's not like his career has fluctuated that much since then. This spring, some of the conversation around Betts has revolved around his visit to Driveline, where his main takeaway was that he needed to add some muscle. What effect that has? We'll see. He set a career high in homers with 35 in 2022. You know what I don't like? The rumors that Betts will be playing more second base this year. No need to overthink. Just put him in right every day and enjoy having the modern Roberto Clemente in Dodger blue. Please ignore my previous ranking of Nolan Arenado. I was lost, now I'm found, was blind, now I see. Nolan Arenado lands at number 5 on the Foolish 50 and is my top third baseman in Major League Baseball. After an uncharacteristic dip in his fielding metrics, Arenado shot back up to his career norms, all while generating a 154 OPS plus at the plate, by far the best single-season total of his career. The haters and the losers might point out that his StatCast batted ball data is simply good, but far from elite. But I'll let you in on a little secret. Arenado is freakishly good at pulling the ball in the air, allowing him to overperform his ex-WOBA on a consistent basis. Plus, he only struck out 11.6% of the time last year. MLB Network chose to drop Juan Soto outside their top 10, an intriguing move. His post-trade deadline stint in San Diego was below his offensive standards, and his progress on defense appears to have come totally undone. Single-season sample sizes for defensive metrics aren't great, but Soto went from +4 outs above average in 2021 to -16 in 2022. Still, despite all odds, he is Juan Soto, and I think any player with his age and track record should remain toward the very top of these rankings. One thing to keep in mind, his batting average on balls in play was .249 last season, 60 points below his career norm. If that swings back to normal, and Soto continues to walk 20% of the time while only striking out at a 14% clip, he'll comfortably lead the league in on-base percentage. My number 3 was number 1 last year, and that's Mike Trout. Coming off a season-ending calf strain in 2021, Trout drastically changed up his plate approach in 2022, swinging more, missing more, but hitting for more power. His .347 ISO last year was the second highest of his career, trailing only the peak juiced ball 2019. With 40 homers in 119 games, he would have likely hit 50 if not for another injury. The baseball world was set ablaze last summer when headlines about Trout's bat condition made their rounds. To what degree that was just empty fear-mongering, we'll see. Although the last few seasons have been the end of an era in the sense that Trout is no longer the consensus best player in the game, I wouldn't count out his ability to earn that distinction again. It still doesn't feel real, but last year, Aaron Judge had a better season than Mike Trout has ever had, erasing the narrative that Trout was the best player in the game because his average years were in line with his challenger's career years. Judge surpassed 11 F4 last season, making him the first player to do so since Barry Bonds. And even though he hit 62 home runs last year, the other elements of his game shouldn't be underestimated either. Judge has proven to be capable both as an acceptable center fielder and plus to plus right fielder. He also set a career high with 16 steals in 2022. Now that we know just how good Judge can be when everything goes right, it'll be interesting to see what his baseline looks like going forward. This was not an agonizing decision for me. Shohei Ohtani is the best player in Major League Baseball, in part because he plays more baseball than anyone on this list. Last year, Shohei became the first player to qualify as both a hitter and pitcher in the same season. He participated in 2,498 batter-pitcher matchups, over 700 more than second place. After a historic MVP campaign in 2021, the most exciting development last year was on the pitching front. Take his bat out of the lineup, and he'd still be a top 10 starting pitcher in the league. And now, with free agency looming, Ohtani is hoping to stay healthy and productive in order to secure a record-breaking deal, whether that be in Anaheim or somewhere else. MLB Network and I have had our fair share of disagreements, especially on the pitching front, but we've agreed on the same top three, including the fact that Shohei Ohtani is number one. Opening day looms. Soon, some players will break out, others will disappoint, and others will simply get hurt, making this list irrelevant in the process. That's okay. It's a yearly snapshot of what I think. If, for whatever reason, you want to know more about what I think, I should point out that I have a Patreon where I post monthly exclusive content. You can pledge today, check out everything I've got on there, and decide whether you want to stay. You won't actually get charged until the first of the month.